to Nicole.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Kuzman. I'm the Assistant Project Manager on 4200 Geary, and I will be providing a brief overview of the project for you all. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the community stakeholders and neighborhood leaders that have given us really valuable insight. We're really excited about acquiring the site. So towards the end of 2019, 4200 Geary came into fruition as TNDC was looking into affordable housing sites in the West Side and also looking into funding. So once we saw the city posted a notice of funding availability during the end of December 2019, we rallied together to submit our application within a month in January. Although the city has yet to make a formal award announcement, TNDC is moving forward with the acquisition of the site, and we're working with the city on the financing underwriting portion for the NOFA award later this year. TNDC has a closing date for purchasing the property on May 8th, and we're currently in the schematic design phase, exploring early options of how this building will look and operate. Our target population are seniors, and our project is structured this way based on the notice of funding availability requirements to focus on certain groups. And we directly heard from Supervisor Pewer's office for family and senior housing is needed in District 1 with the further community need for senior housing. We are also able to design more units for seniors. Family housing would limit us to approximately 55 units at this site versus the 98 to 99 units we are currently proposing in order to bring in more low-income units. Furthermore, the project site is situated on a really great corner with direct access to high-demand muni bus lines, such as the 38 on Geary Boulevard, which are one of the factors we've considered for not proposing parking at this site. In regards to income and rents, there are a mix of 1-bedrooms and studios, 32 units at 75% AMI, 16 units at 70% AMI. The remaining 50 of these units will be funded by the new senior operating
Nicole,
subsidy.
sorry to break your rhythm there, because you're going really well. But you went through those numbers really fast.
Okay.
So if you could just go through them a little bit slower, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
Can you start at the number where you said something about 55 units if it was family housing versus?
Yeah, so 55 units for family housing, and we're currently proposing 98 to 99 units for seniors.
Okay, sorry, and then the breakdown. I think you were going into a breakdown of the 98 to 99 units for seniors, right?
Yes.
Okay,
so,
cool. Yeah, if you could do that again, just slower, that'd be great.
Sure. So the mix of 1-bedrooms and studios, currently 32 units are at 75% AMI. 16 units at 70% AMI, and then the remaining 50 units will be funded by the new senior operating subsidy restricted to extremely low income seniors.
And by LOSP for formerly homeless tenants.
And is extremely low income just below 50% AMI, or is it a specific range?
30% of their income. So out of these 98 units, so that are structured at the 70 to 75% AMI, for example, a studio at 70% AMI, the rent would approximately be, or would be $1,452 a month versus the 1-bedroom at 70% AMI at $1,655 a month for rent. And
Sorry,
I want to point.
Can you do that one more time? Sorry, the
Sure.
studio at 75% is 1,452.
Yeah. Studio is 70% AMI, for example, would be $1,452. And the 1-bedroom at 70% AMI would be $1,655.
Okay.
And I want to point out that these income levels are really high and don't really reflect the income levels of District 1 seniors. And we understand that and are working closely with the city to explore ways we can reduce rent as much as we can, bringing in more senior operating subsidy into the project, as well as balancing, supporting the building's operational cost for tenants for both low income seniors and potentially families. So if there are any other questions on what I just covered.
So if you could just clarify that really quick, sorry. Can you just said families, so you're looking at a mix of families and seniors, is that correct?
Right now we're focusing on seniors,
Okay.
but in the agenda you brought up that there is a community feedback about potential family housing.
Yeah, this is Kaleda from the Richmond Senior Center. I think I'm echoing your question, Joseph. So I heard that 55 units for families, you're focusing on 98 units for seniors. What would it look like if it was intergenerational? Because the benefit there would be huge. And so is there a projected number of what the units would be then?
Thanks, Kaleda.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's something Colleen will also bring up regarding intergenerational possibilities.
Yeah, it sounds like the question is maybe about the unit mix and what that might look like if it was intergenerational. I don't know if we necessarily have something specified. Like I know that what YA has helped us to figure out for what it would look like if it was family with a mix of like studios to 3 bedrooms would be the 55 units. I feel like it, and YA can correct me or Katie can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the intergenerational housing would have a similar unit mix. Because as is, I think the way that the 55 units is set up, there's very few, I think, large family units like the 2s and the 3s as is. So I can't imagine it being too different if it was set for intergenerational housing.
I will offer too. I think it would be challenging for us to literally deliver like planned intergenerational housing, and the challenge is really that the affordable housing finance system, particularly the state and local subsidies on which we rely, and really more the state programs, they really ask us to characterize a project as either family or senior, and then sometimes or serving special needs. And so the challenge is we could put forward a unit mix that included that range of studios to 3 bedrooms. And in theory, seniors could move into any of those unit sizes, but I think we tend to see mostly they look for studios or 1 bedrooms. The challenge that we have is that you can't really legally target like studios and 1 bedrooms to seniors and other bedroom sizes to families. Where that does happen, it's typically in a larger building where you might have separate wings that are financed separately. And I realize it's kind of silly. It's really a construct of the way that the housing is financed. I realize that in real life, seniors live upstairs from me and next door to me, as do families. But that's just, it's a constraint within which we work that we really have to generally characterize serving one population or another. So what Nicole was trying to say that Colleen is prepared to talk about is we can think about how we might encourage intergenerational uses within the building. Like there is that ground floor opportunity. So we typically might think that we would have senior serving uses in a senior building, but if having some intergenerational activity or mixing were important to the community, we could think about having more youth or family serving use on the ground floor. Or it could also be flipped, like we could have a family building with senior services on the ground floor.
That's helpful. I think, yeah, and that's really helpful that you went through kind of how the financing structure works and how it's categorical and all of that. Just to clarify what the conversation was kind of amongst our organizations was, if it is kind of a single age group that's being focused on for the residential,
right,
the senior housing, then there was a concern that we make an opportunity to bring in intergenerational programming so that there would be children on site, that there's, that it's not just kind of a cloistered senior environment,
right,
that it actually allow for more kind of community interaction, also that there's a richness to, of course, for the seniors to be around youth and for youth to be around seniors.
Right.
But if it was family housing, that concern, as you were saying, Katie, it's not as much of a concern because it would naturally be intergenerational, which is one of the reasons why people were talking about family housing, because there is kind of an inherent kind of richness to the environment. units there. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that point. There's other questions. Oh, right. So I guess one of the things, just to bring this forward, there was a suggestion that, like, Colleen, when you were, oh, I'm sorry, that was Nicole who was presenting before, sorry. When you were going through all the numbers and stuff, if you have something that you want to share on the screen, it might be helpful.
Okay, I can just copy and paste that into the chat if that's okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
As the formal presentation.
Okay, great. And then, oh, okay. So for, this is just a question on the operating subsidies. The percentage of AMI that the operating subsidies would be applied to, what is that AMI level that those subsidies get applied to?
Correct. So for both the senior operating subsidy and for the LOSP, or the formerly homeless units, those two groups, they're at 20% AMI.
All right, thanks, Colleen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions for right now. I'll turn it back over to, I guess, Colleen.
Nicole, I think you might have a little bit more.
Or Nicole? Okay.
Yeah. So as far as just kind of going over some of the questions in the chat, just to reiterate, this is something that we'll be working with the city to reflect the needs of the community and have those costs reduced in a way that is feasible for the project. But that's all I had before I pass it over to Colleen.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. And again, thanks everybody for being here and letting us present. We really are excited about the project amidst all this COVID stuff. At the property, and something that TNDC provides that I think is really unique is that TNDC has an in-house services and property management team. And so we will have in-house social workers on site on the ground floor in addition to in-house property management. The social services are available to our extremely low-income seniors, formerly homeless tenants, and really any tenant that is interested in services. And it's very specific to kind of housing retention, setting up referrals if needed, and getting them connected to community resources. Some other things with this property, so there is commercial space. There's about 1,900 square feet, or 1,910 specifically square feet of commercial space on the ground floor. And to be very fair, we haven't totally programmed the space yet. I think we've been exploring possibilities and opportunities through the meetings that we've been attending for what it might be or what the best use might be to serve the community and the tenants. Some examples of partnerships that we've done in the past that Chris right here has done in our South of Market community area at 1036 Mission Street. We have a great partnership with SOMCAN in our small retail space in Soma for them to have programming space. In Mission Bay at 1300 4th Street or 626 Mission Bay, we've partnered with 826 Valencia, an out of school time or after school program type space that does creative writing for kids. That's accessible to the greater community, plus for our tenants, that's a family building. We have a lot of partnerships actually that we're working on right now. Elaine is involved as well over in the Mission, where we're working with community groups who are being displaced or need larger spaces. So at our 1990 Folsom project that's under construction, or our 681 Florida project that will soon be under construction, we're partnering with Galleria de la Raza, Homey, and Carnival in those retail spaces to kind of see community serving use and to benefit our tenants. So we're really open to kind of exploring what the community thinks is a good use of space there. What we've done for a lot of these spaces and what we're thinking we might do for the space to keep it equitable and fair as far as the process is, in the past we've released an RFP or a request for proposal for the space and go through like a formal process for how a tenant is selected to be in the commercial space.
Hey, Colleen, just really quick, would it be possible to screen share so we can see that ground floor that you're talking about?
You will see it in a great presentation from Yaku.
Okay, cool, thank you. And just really quick, the 1,900 square feet, I mean, you talked about a bunch of different uses in your other buildings. What fits in 1,900 square feet for people?
That's a great question. So we have spaces that are approximately 1,910 square feet in Mission Bay that are going to like boba tea shops. or for office spaces. Chris, I don't know the exact square footage of SOMCAN, but it sounds close to what SOMCAN is operating out of. I don't know if I've lost Chris. He might be frozen.
Yeah, he looks frozen. It's always so awkward with Zoom calls. Katie?
Yeah, I think that space that SOMCAN has might be around 1,200 square feet. So to be clear, it's not very large. Like we are doing a childcare center at 1990 Folsom that I think is like 5,000 square feet. And I've developed a senior center in the past that had a lot of services within it. It was really a healthcare institution that was like 10,000 square feet. So Kalita, maybe you have an example, or some of you who are operating spaces could talk about the amount of square feet that you operate out of, because I know that's one of the conversations we were going to have with the Richmond Senior Center. I understand that CYC also had some ideas. So I think it's probably enough space for one program or two very small programs is my instinct.
Yeah, our center hosts congregate meals, and we have a home delivered groceries partnership with the Richmond Neighborhood Center, and we also do aging and disability resources. So we're running 5 different programs out of about 2,500 square feet.
Okay.
So yeah, I think any kind of like congregate or activity gathering for seniors would need, I think 2,000 square feet minimum, because well, like our most recent experience, we had to cut off serving meals right away. We had to cut in half before we went to the shelter in place. And I think in the new way of serving seniors, we're not going to have 8 people sitting at a table really again in the future. So I'd say 2,000 square feet minimum.
Yeah. I know that at 681 Florida, one of the units is actually doing an in-unit childcare, and that's about 1,300 square feet, or about a little under 1,300 square feet. And so that, I think that was what we were thinking could be a response to getting some intergenerational space use in the property, is if potentially the commercial space could be programmed to be kind of like a childcare space, something that kind of gets people to interact with different generations. But we really are, like, I don't think we've specifically programmed intergenerational spaces, so we're interested in hearing more and just kind of seeing and hearing what that could be.
What about beacons and after-school programs?
We're open to it. Katie?
Yeah, right now we are reliant on our spaces at our school sites. So that's where we operate everything out of. But there's always room for expansion and creative use for programs for the community. And that's why we have the One Richmond space, which is in CCDC space. So we're always looking for more space to do those kind of community enrichment activities. But there's no specific plan for that right now beyond that. So.
Yeah, and I know Housing Rights Committee may be interested too. I feel an RFP coming on right now.
Yes, I think, yeah, thanks for, yeah, so right now our site is located on 7th and Geary, which is really like close to the site that's when being discussed right now. But yeah, but our space, it's a little clunky. It's great, but it's not very accessible. So we are always looking for, a storefront space where we can serve more folks. And I think that'll be a good space to serve folks who might be in the building too. So like, I think what I'm hearing is that the Richmond district just needs like more space for folks to gather and like for community to use. So if you all need more like visual ideas, I think we're happy to provide a tour to like the space that we have right now. So that will be a more visual thing for you all to kind of see what we're talking about.
I think that's a good segue to the actual visuals that we have. Yaku, if you can get started. I don't know how you might be able to screen share.
I should be able to just share the screen. So first, just a little introduction on our office. So I'm Yaku Askew, YA Studio principal, started the office about 15 years ago. Really our passion is in affordable housing, and we do family housing as well as senior specific housing. But we also do a lot of custom homes and restaurants and bars. So we have kind of a wide range of portfolio, but 80% of our work is in the affordable sector. So we're doing work throughout San Francisco. Really excited to be part of this project and here speaking with you guys today. And I will just see if I can get this to share. And, hopefully you guys can all see my screen now.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm going to go fairly quickly because I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and that'll give us an opportunity to come back and address any of these slides in particular. So just a little bit, we talked about TNDC, we talked a little bit about YA Studio. Some of the photos down on the bottom here are a 75 unit affordable housing project in Potrero Hill that was just completed this year. It's family housing with a pretty big courtyard. Projects on the left are some projects from TNDC. I think one of the things they didn't really mention yet was they really have a wonderful urban agriculture program that's part of their nonprofit group, and you start to see a lot of that feed its way into the buildings, and that's something we hope to bring into this site as well. Then I'm just going to kind of walk through just to give you a little bit of orientation on the site. So north is up, south is down. So this is Geary cutting through the middle here. This is 6th Avenue running in the north-south direction. And this is the site here. It's about right at the corner. Pretty good site. We have the Kaiser Permanente building, health services across kitty corner. I think the Kentucky KFC is on the opposite corner there. Let's see here. Just seeing what these chats are. Okay. Let's see if that was related to the presentation. So that's the site. One of the things we look at when we're looking at development sites like this is what are the amenities close by? So this is a little bit of our site analysis. So looking at some of the transit opportunities that are nearby, and what this tells us is that there really are some wonderful opportunities. I think you're all pretty familiar with Geary as a major transit corridor, and in the future, it looks like it's going to be an even better biking corridor, and really quite a friendly pedestrian corridor, increasingly more pedestrian friendly. So looking at other site amenities, so here's our site here, located on the corner, looking at parks that are within walking distance or short commuting distance too. So we have one that's just a half block away on 7th Avenue. Looking at some of the other amenities such as grocery shopping where we can get food for some of the residents. We have some great opportunities within a block or two. Looking at health providers, fortunate to be a kitty corner to the Kaiser facility across the street. Looking at the library facilities, which we have within a couple of blocks. So also starting to look at restaurants and how well populated it is. So what this really tells us is that any of the uses here, this is a great urban location in terms of transit, in terms of getting access to a variety of different amenities for the residents. And then getting more specific about the program we're looking at for this project. So we're looking at, currently it's programmed for 98 units, so about 100 affordable senior homes, mix of 1 bedrooms and studios. And we're really looking to do an active ground floor that deals and interacts and responds to the community, and then have all the residents up on the upper levels. We're also looking at the potential to integrate some rooftop gardens for the residents. And so these would be different opportunities for either gardening programs, meditation spaces, exercise spaces. So really providing a variety of amenities for the residents of the building. And then we have a couple of sort of typical plans here on the lower part of the slide, showing a traditional studio unit and a 1-bedroom unit, and what those sizes start to lay out, how those sizes start to lay out. And then looking at sort of the overall team goals for this project. And I apologize, these are somewhat generic because we're at the beginning stages. This is a concept design, so we don't have a finished, fleshed out project for you. We are in the process of bringing on all of the rest of the consultants, which we hope to have on board by mid-May. There's actually an RFP that's out right now to bring on energy consultants, to bring on structural engineers, and really bring on the entire team, which is going to help us sort of flesh out a lot of these questions. But sort of big picture, you know, we are really looking to do something that's sustainably going to stand out as a really progressive building. One of the benefits of that is that you spend a little bit of money up front, and typically it's a very low amount up front, but you really get savings over the long term. And what that's helpful for is it increases TNDC's operating costs, or decreases TNDC's operating costs, allowing them to better subsidize some of their programs. So looking at things like natural daylighting and ventilation, providing great opportunities for access to the outdoors, a variety of different outdoor spaces, looking at materials that are healthy for the residents, and then looking at renewable energy. And one of the things we're looking at is going with an electric only building with on-site electric generation. So really trying to think of this as a smart building for the future. And then also just looking at it from an architectural perspective, how do we design a building that is, you know, big enough to be appropriate to get the right number of residents into the building, but also fit into the neighborhood context. And oftentimes what we want to emphasize is that ground floor pedestrian reactiveness and responsiveness. And so how do we create a really welcoming ground floor for the community? And then also creating a wonderful home for the residents above. So this is looking at the first floor. So this is an overall diagram of what we are currently laying out. So 6th Avenue on the right here. This is Geary Boulevard down below. So this is the intersection here, Kaiser's Kitty Corner. On Geary Boulevard, we're basically identifying currently about 1,800 or so, 1,900 square feet of community space. And so that's what we've been talking about as to what that program might be. And we actually have a diagram of how that might get broken up into smaller spaces as well. Looking at doing the residential entry off of 6th Avenue. So thinking of really 6th Avenue being a much more residential feel, a smaller scale pedestrian feel, Geary being a much more commercial corridor. So bringing the residential entry off of 6th Avenue. We're looking at providing a pretty large loading zone for the residents and for visitors to be able to come in and drop off along 6th Avenue. We have all basically the resident offices and the service offices and the community rooms. And then we have this great big courtyard. So basically the building wraps the two streets, and we have a nice big private open space for the residents in the corner. And then we have all the back of house utilities down here as well. So a fairly big percentage of the ground floor is actually taken up by utilities and back of house services. This is just a quick look at what happens if we broke this down into 3 spaces. So something that we're looking at doing in the Mission District here, for example, is providing smaller spaces. And one of the benefits of this is you can get smaller nonprofit groups. Sometimes it's easier for these smaller programmed areas to afford the leases for this. So we can look at one 1,200, 1,300 square foot space and one 600 square foot space. We can look at three 600 square foot spaces. So lots of flexibility in how this could lay out. Moving our way upstairs, a mix of 1-bedrooms and studios. So basically all the sort of social gathering spaces and support services are on the ground floor, and all the upper levels are residential. So a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, mixing throughout there. Elevator in the middle, a couple of stairs into the building, looking at providing some natural light into the spaces. And then looking at the upper level, looking for opportunities to create some of these terraces, taking advantage of TNDC's urban agricultural program, looking for opportunities for exercise areas, meditation areas, stretching areas, different areas for the residents to experience and enjoy. And one of the things as an architect looking at a project like this, and I know this is just responding to some of the questions that came up earlier, is that we look at the site as a fairly small site. I think there's a tendency to look at it as a pretty large site. So for us, it feels, senior population feels right for the site. Typically the family housing that we're doing are on much larger sites because just the number, as soon as we add in those number of bedrooms and the type of amenity spaces you need for family, childcare, and for play spaces, it just gets to a much larger building footprint. And so we're doing another senior project here in the Mission, which is also a smaller site like this, and also very much lends itself to studios and 1 bedrooms for a senior population. And then again, just noting the fact that this is concept design, so we're not showing real architecture here. So these are big blocky images, but wanting to give you a sense of what the building is going to look like in its context, and what some of the program is going to look like. So looking at these opportunities for upper level gardens and terraces off of Geary, off of 6th Avenue, and then this private courtyard for the residents on the ground floor. And then just looking at a couple different views along Geary Street. And we are sensitive to the fact that this is one of the bigger projects, one of the bigger buildings in this area, but we're working hard. We're currently in the schematic design phases right now, looking at different ways of articulating the building so it does scale down, so it does really have a strong pedestrian presence and is not looming by any means, and really sort of responding to 6th Avenue and its smaller residential feel. So that's kind of the overall, and I know there's going to be some questions, so I can go back to any of these slides if you have them. And then just to give you a sense of the overall schedule, you know, so we're going to have a continuous outreach program as part of this process. Looking at the building design, so we're working at schematics design right now. This is going to be a fairly lengthy process once we bring on our consultants, going through that process. Starting to interact with the city come the summer. Fortunately, right now, the city has made a priority of affordable housing and affordable senior housing. So we're in good shape from an approval standpoint, and we're going to start that process this summer. And then we're anticipating construction to start in the fall of 2022. And we hope to bring our first residents in the spring of 2024. So that is the big picture, and I will turn it over for some questions and comments.
Does anybody want to jump in with a question? I don't see any in the chat, so go ahead and just jump in if you have something.
Yeah, with just studios and 1 bedrooms, I'm not really seeing very many families being able to be part of this.
Right. So, so the TNDC team was saying that they really see this as being senior housing for a number of different reasons, and the senior housing is categorically different from the family housing. So if it's senior housing, it's all seniors. TNDC, did I get that right?
And the intergenerational piece would come in through the ground floor activity, whatever the ground floor is for. Is that what you're thinking then? Like after school programs or something that's family oriented as a sort of service center or community center?
Yes, that's what we're thinking. I mean, to be really transparent, I think we were originally thinking of something senior serving on the ground floor, but we want to be responsive to community input. And we are, I think the thing that we really want is for it to be community serving, but it doesn't, we're not really particularly tied to it being senior serving. So if folks wanted us to, you know, that were important to this group and others in the community, we really would explore how to have a ground floor use that might attract children and families and encourage some, you know, some mixing.
Yeah, so this is Dahlia from Richmond District Rising. That was a really helpful presentation. Thank you. I just want to lift up some conversations that we've had in Richmond District Rising and have other members add in, but some priorities that we lifted up that I just want to say we're happy to hear about is the gardening and the rooftop garden. That is a priority for some of our members. Love that it serves the tenants. I think we'd also be interested if there's a way for some of that to be community serving, depending on the commercial space, like who takes up the ground floor. We were interested in a mix, right, of family and senior housing. And now that we're understanding the financing world a little bit better of affordable housing, that's unfortunately, it sounds like a binary dictated by finances and not by how real people live. But that said, we do want to see that some kind of mix. So we did think about childcare. It sounds like there's one, I think you mentioned one example where there was a in-unit childcare center that was around the same 1,900 square foot. So I think we'd be interested in in that it's not necessarily like a direct need that we've been able to research ourselves, but we're open to that, like surveying our members, seeing who has kids and if where their kids are going to childcare, and if there's a, you know, just community needs assessment around that. But either way, I think we would love to see not just senior focused ground floor space if it's going to be senior housing. And then we did want to talk a little bit about, this is going back to what Nicole was sharing, around just the levels, the AMI levels for seniors. And so we did a little bit of our own research and we're happy to share, but according to ACS data, the most recent, which is the 5-year estimates from 2016, half of senior households in the Richmond make below 65% AMI, and half of those make 25% AMI from 2016. So it's there's a plurality of extremely low income seniors in the Richmond. Of course, we know that any affordable housing site in San Francisco doesn't just serve the seniors of that neighborhood, and yet we are, you know, most responsive to where we live. So we just want to name that, and maybe we could hear a little bit more about, you mentioned working with the city, or really just trying to figure out how to bring those AMI levels down or what's possible there.
Can I just ask a quick question of clarity first? When you say childcare, I'm just curious about the age group that you're referring to, because it could mean up to 18 years old or 17 years old for some people. So are you thinking sort of 0 to 5? Or are you guys thinking more, you know, 5 to 12? What are the thoughts?
I think we're really flexible, and we'd love to hear too from our other Richmond District partners. We're totally open.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we also know that there's outdoor space requirements that will constrain who we can send there. But yeah, we didn't, as Delia is saying during our discussions, we didn't say, yeah, they need to, there needs to be a specific age range that is targeted. It was more the idea of intergenerational. So we're guessing that things.
I just wanted to identify if there was a specific need to a specific population, because there are big implications for each one of those different types of programs from a state requirements perspective. So
yeah, can I also just so Colleen, I know you're gonna answer. I just want to add to Dalia's point. Yeah, like because based on the tenants we're serving, especially tenants here on the west side, and those folks who are in need of housing, who are always asking where they can go find affordable housing, those are the folks that are really making definitely below 65% of the AMI. So yeah, like Dalia was saying, if there's a way to kind of bring that down, that would be great. And then also based on the kind of the breakdown that y'all have right now, we've seen some issues in buildings like that where the tenants have really different income levels. It's really split like that. Sometimes they create some kind of tension within the building, and that creates some types of tenant issues too. And I'm glad to hear that they're going to be on-site management. So I kind of just want to bring this up for you all to kind of be aware of that, because sometimes that could create a really hard to resolve tension within the building. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start first and I'll pass it to Nicole, Katie, or Chris if they have any comments to add. And this is to respond to Dalia's question about the very high AMIs. The first, those were put into the project more for the project to pencil when we submitted the NOFA. Supporting very low incomes like the senior operating subsidy tenants and the formerly homeless tenants come at a pretty high operating cost. And we were trying to figure out how to, just the way that the building is structured as is from when we submitted it, how could it pencil so that it wouldn't just go super negative over time to pay for the operating costs, whether that's the social workers and property management team, or just like operating the building utilities wise. And so one thing that we're looking into, and we are in discussions with the city because they're also aware just of how high those incomes would have to be for a senior to afford those units, whether we could get more senior operating subsidy for more of those units, or if there's like a different way to finance the building that could make this work. Katie, Nicole, or Chris, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I would just say, without getting into all the gory details, there are some financing programs that we can pursue at later stages when we're farther along that can help bring more income from rental subsidies into the building. And that's a pattern that the city of San Francisco has executed on for quite some time. So we have a fair degree of confidence that some additional rental subsidy will likely become available that we could then use to lower rents on those higher income units. At the same time, we want to keep working to see what we can do to not only rely on that pathway. So we will keep working it. And I think that's the main message I want to leave with you all, that your concern is legitimate and real. We acknowledge that. The city of San Francisco, our partners in the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, also acknowledge that. And so we will keep working to bring the affordability levels down, particularly at that higher level.
I want to note, sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to Dahlia and to Dawn for the information in the chat. But to respond to Dawn's question of what would be the impact of incorporating some 2-bedroom units into this plan, I think just if, and Katie was touching on this by category when we apply for financing, for senior housing, I don't believe they allow 2 bedrooms. I could be incorrect, Katie, but I've seen it just be as studios and 1s, and 2 if it's a rehab.
It's fairly unusual, like if HUD doesn't do direct finance of senior housing, unfortunately, but they used to totally not allow it. I have in the past built like 10% of the units for 2 bedrooms, so it's something that we could consider. I think when we have done that, it has been presented sometimes as helpful for people who might have an in-home caregiver or who might, have an intergenerational household. So that's certainly something we could consider. And I think particularly if you had, some need data that you wanted to share with, it doesn't need to be super like scientific validated 15 ways. I'm just saying, if there's things that you're seeing in your community needs that the 2 bedrooms could address, that would be helpful to share so we could understand that.
I can say that a lot of seniors live with their adults, children with disabilities, and we serve quite a few of them through our home delivered groceries program. So,
thank you. That's helpful information. And there's actually one particular subsidy that's targeted to adults with disabilities. So that might be an opportunity for us to look for some of the kind of rental or operating subsidy I was describing. I realized too, I wanted to make sure, Joy, we responded to your other comment about we sometimes have seen where there's differences in income or maybe backgrounds, maybe people who come from experiencing homelessness and people who have not mixing well. And I'm sure that happens sometimes, and I'm sure, I know there's tension among tenants in our buildings sometimes. But one of the things I think that is really important about the way that TNDC operates, part of a really core philosophy of ours that Colleen did mention early on, is that we have one services program that we make available to all of our tenants. So we have social workers on our staff, and the sizing for the budget for that is often calculated based on the number of people who come from direct experiences of homelessness. But it is a core value of TNDC, and really it's also a requirement of the city funding that now flows through the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, that the staff that are paid for with those dollars, that their services are available to anyone in the community who needs them. And so we provide those social work services. We also provide the work through the urban agricultural program. We provide community organizing services, though honestly, our community organizing work is more concentrated in the Tenderloin and Soma, which is where, we have the most properties. But we would certainly be interested in partnering with organizing efforts in your communities, where we help tenants connect with advocacy efforts. Like in the Tenderloin, people care a lot about having healthier food options at corner stores, or having safer streets, right? Having more pedestrian improvements to make it safer for people to move through the neighborhood. So we really do try to work with our tenants to help them, network and figure out how to affect change, right? Changes that they see that they want things to be different or better or more in their neighborhoods.
Thanks, that's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katie. I'm just going to prompt the one last question that's in the chat and then move to next steps because we don't have that much time left. So there's a question from Elaine for the senior operating subsidy. I think there was somebody said that it was 20% of median were those seniors. Is it possible for the senior operating subsidy to apply to seniors who make less than 20% of median?
So this is Nicole. I just want to jump in. From my understanding, that's something we'd have to talk with MoCD and HSH. 15% AMI tenants would still qualify, but it would just depend on that restriction.
Yeah.
Then HSH is the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. And so I just want to close the loop on the childcare thing where while that's something we're interested in, it's not like necessarily our top priority. We do love the idea of nonprofit space. Like we have HRC and Richmond Neighborhood Center, like local organizations that would love the space. So the idea of an RFP that if possible could like give preference to locally based organizations, you know, I think we'd absolutely be interested in that too. And then one more thing just to lift up, thank you Yaku for the presentation. We did think a lot about like the 6th Avenue loading space and just like what would be needed for that for seniors and how it's a really busy corridor and there was actually a cyclist that was killed right in front of that like on 6th Avenue there. I think it was like in 2011. And so just we want to be really mindful too of the sidewalk and like how to activate that space so it's safe for pedestrians too and is like a welcoming, you know, people can come in whether it's off Geary or where the entrance is for community members too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciated you sharing that observation before we came into the meeting because I did give me an opportunity to refresh on like where the bus stops are located. And I see they're close, but they're, you know, people have to cross Geary and cross 6th. And I know it's a different audience, but I appreciate in the earlier subgroup of folks here, we were kind of talking about how to prepare for approaching the larger community that might have concerns around parking. So I think, you know, for us to be able to tap your experiences around like the loading issue that you're describing so that we can really make sure that when we, as we refine our design, we're making sure we're really responding to, you know, the kinds of things that you describe. How do people actually move from, you know, a relative's car or a friend's car or the bus into the building? You know, the zoning, the loading zone that we're showing, is that the right size? Is that the right place? I did notice that it looks like it's already a white zone on Geary, so hopefully we won't actually be taking any parking away that people have been parking at, those sorts of things. So we have appreciated and we'll continue to appreciate your refinements about how to make sure we design the building and its interface with the streets to work as optimally as possible, and also how to prepare ourselves to, you know, speak to larger audiences that might not all be as completely, not that we're completely aligned, but as nicely aligned as this group is. So we've appreciated that and we'll continue to.
Excellent. Sorry, I have to cut this off, but I did write down a few next steps that I heard. Okay. I'll just run through them and then if people can chime in if I missed anything. One is to take a tour of at least one TNDC building and maybe more. And we may have to do that virtually for now, but if that can be made possible, that would be great. Just so we can see the urban agriculture, so we can see the nonprofit space, so we can see some of the features that you all have been discussing. Number 2 was Joy offered to provide a tour of the Housing Rights Committee space, and maybe that could be done virtually as well, at least for now. Number 3, there was something else on the agenda notes that we sent around, which was an opportunity for a community partner to formally be part of the development. So if we could maybe have that conversation, doesn't sound like we're going to be able to have that now, but maybe if I can follow up, I guess probably with Katie or Colleen to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then we've had a lot of conversation about this 4th next step, which is community participation in the design. So we saw that there's kind of a time frame between now and then applying to the city, which sounds like this summer for planning approvals, I'm guessing, right? So you're going to be nailing down what your overall building program is in the next couple of months. And so I'm wondering if maybe we can set up a schedule. Oh, I see that there's people coming in for the next meeting. If you're coming in for the 6 o'clock meeting, I am going to cut this meeting off and then I'm going to reinitiate. So I apologize to all of you who are coming in because you're coming into a prior meeting. Anyway, so I'm wondering if maybe we can set up a regular schedule and maybe Katie, you and I can work on that as well so that we can have some...
Hey, Joseph, it's John.
Hi, John. So if we can, yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, we're getting.
We'll coordinate that with the architect and figure out something that makes sense for everyone.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay.
Were there any other next steps before I cut this meeting off? Anything anybody wants to weigh in on? Okay, great. Thank you so much to TNDC. Thank you so much to every Richmond District organization that's here. This has been an amazing meeting. If you are coming in for the 6 o'clock meeting, I am going to cut this off right now, and then I will reinitiate.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to thank everyone for all the prep.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.